A Chinese urban planner and architect, co-founded his company in Shanghai after further studies in France, Paris. 一名在法国巴黎深造后，回上海合伙创办了自己公司的中国城市规划师兼建筑师。
My name is LiGuo Li. My current position is General Director of IFADUR, which is a company that I created with my associate partner Thierry Melot in Paris. I'm quite proud that I was received in Tongji University in the major of urban planning, which is, I think, the most famous major in this field of China. During the 5 years of education in Tongji University, I learned so much. Second milestone, of course, is to go to France, in Paris, which also changed completely my vision of cities and my vision on the urban planning career. The first vision I was already changed in Tongji in Shanghai because I'm coming from northeast, which is not a very developed city. But in Paris, it's more than that, this changement, because it's like you're living in a museum. Because Paris, it's a so protected historical city. The whole city is like a museum. I never imagined that a city could be constructed like this. But it's, in the meantime, very modern city. This is the vision that the city gave to me from 2004. In the meantime, I started to learn urban planning in l'Institut d'Urbanisme de Paris, which means Paris Urban Planning Institute, which changed my vision of urban planning from French vision to Chinese vision. Because urban planning for a Chinese urban planner is to design the city. But urban planning for French people means the whole science connected to the city, how a city works, which include the field of philosophy, law systems, sociology, economy, of course, architecture, etc. Last milestone is the company that I created with Thierry Melot, which is my first boss in Paris. I worked with him from 2005. So during 12 years, I learned a lot from him. And 2 years ago, 2014, I created a new company with him. And I'm proud that we can achieve the mission to transfer the French know-how about sustainable construction of cities to Chinese market. First problem, I think, is the identity problems. Architecture needs to have its own identity. If not, for me, it's not an architecture. It should be a construction or infrastructure. Architecture needs to be a handmade suit, which translates the exact character of this man who wear it. One building is for one special function. Of course, the function could be complex. And for well-defined users. So one building is different to another in the function or for the users. So if two buildings is the same, why people prefer to live in this one, not in the other one? So for me, architecture needs to be identified, which depends on who uses it and what is the program the building should contain. Today, most of the buildings in China, I think I'd rather prefer to say them as engineering project or infrastructure, not an architecture. Second problem is timing problem. Today we see a lot of classical or neoclassical buildings built in China because in this market developers can sell better with a better price the classical like French style, Spanish style, Italian style buildings, especially for the housing and commercial buildings. But for French architect or international architect, the timing is very important because architecture has a function to translate the time, which period we are living in. I remember once I go into a classical village, which is of course a not real one. You don't know where you are because you are just inside a French style building, the same scale, the same material. You don't know where you are, you don't know which period you are living in. It's like you are returned suddenly to the 18th century in Paris, but you are just in China. It's something like strange. I don't know, 200 years later, how people can judge what we have done today. For international architects, what we build today need to translate the materials of today, the technique of today, the acknowledgement of today, the use, how people use space, of course, the lifestyle, for example, how people use the digital interactions and machines today. This also needs to be integrated in architecture. So it's, I think it's something connected to the profession. If people just because of market reason, they build something which not belongs to our nation, which not belongs to the geography, which not belongs to the current period, I think it's not right. Third problem is planning about architecture. Today, most of architects complain that we don't have enough time to accomplish the mission. That's also why architects don't have enough time to identify the best concept on the design. Because due to political or economic reasons, the mayor or the developers, they are under pressure of their superior or of the financial pressures, so they don't give enough time to architect. That's also a part of the reason that we don't have enough time to think, so we don't give the right identities to the city. I realized that clients are more and more practical from years to years. 10 years ago, I don't think that we can persuade some clients. They just insist in what they have in mind. They don't give up nearly anything in terms of our advice. When we say 10 days to produce a concept is just impossible, they just tell us you can do it. I believe that you can do it. I need something in 10 days. Anyway, you need to give me something. Today, when you explain that we need time, some clients understand, and they are trying to understand, especially in the coastal area, in the east side, very developed cities like Shanghai, Beijing, or Canton, which have some international behaviors in business field. They are trying to enter in the international rules to play the architecture games. They are more and more near to the international thinkings, and they integrate more and more professional consultants even inside in their company, because more and more architects going overseas to learn international know-hows, people coming back, several has been also integrated in developers company. So they are also trying to persuade their superior, even it's difficult to build something right, or to build something better. Price problems has been changed also. Years before, it's difficult to persuade governments to give more design fees because they need to respect the national laws, which already defined what is the design fees. But today it's a little bit detached, and they can give, especially international companies, more design fees, more time to think about better architecture. 10 years before, I'm not surprised that they just give us some oral demands to make architecture. They just give us the surfaces and some oral descriptions of what they want without a written description of the programs. But today, some of developers, they are professional enough to give us the right programs. A context is that for architects, they need to have precise programs. For example, for a hotel, I need to know what is the size of each room, what is the size of a restaurant, what is the size for reception, for swimming pool, etc. First, I think I want to be something like open mind. I try to build less enough rules in the company, minimum of rules which allow that company to run, to go healthy enough, but the most flexible possible. Because when you define too much rules, it became a very heavy machine, difficult to turn around. The market is changing very rapidly, that we need to react in real time. I can say that people can discuss with me on anything. Just a question of in public space or in private space. Second thing is to integrate in the maximum of sustainable development know-how. This is connected, related to the profession. Because today we are facing dangerous environment for human beings living world. The planet need to be protected for us. We construct in different manner in the past several centuries, which create a lot of pollution. We continue to do that today in some region. Today, even from yesterday, several years before, we started, and today we need to be really consider this question. We need to change our behavior when we do largely concerned field of city aspects like transport, industry, and construction. which are the major pollution source. For us as architects, which is largely concerned in the construction field, we want to integrate the most possible the sustainable development know-how. Third one is we call that comma. Comma in English or virgule en français means dialogues never stop. In each design works, we try to discuss, and each step is in evolution. Architecture, I think, is something which on moving steps, which never stops. Each one, even you, for example, you are not an architect, you can express yourself because you have some understanding about buildings. You live every day in some open or closed space. You have, of course, your understanding about the facade of a utilization of a space. So we try to integrate dialogues to open mind of architect, to integrate these fruits into our creation. The dialogues between architects, between some crossover different other profession, between clients and us, between users like the population, the local population who will use this building, between the financial people who need to invest in this building, or the government. We want to understand this society better and better to integrate our understanding about this society into the creation. For the first 3 years, we want to accumulate enough clients and acknowledgement of the sustainable development know-how, and of course the acknowledgement of the Chinese society to focus on the design works. We are in the second year of this first step. We want to achieve something like 100 million revenue for the first 3 years. When we think we accumulate enough client resource, knowing about the current society, how the country, the cities works, and enough sustainable development, especially French sustainable development know-how, we will start another 3 year steps to integrate the technique, even product of sustainable development into the buildings and the cities, not only on design but also on the construction.